Hey, welcome back to I'm Going In. I'm your host, Todd Blyleven, and this show is all about the perseverance and the moment you realize I'm knocked down. I need to go back in for myself. And through that journey of rising again for yourself, through the traumatic events that we face, we learn how to help others that have maybe been knocked down in similar fashions, or maybe it's completely different, but we just see somebody that is down. And so it's the moment when we've realized we've gone in for ourselves, now we're going in for others. And I have an incredible guest today. His name is Mark Astor. As an experienced attorney dedicated to helping individuals and families navigate substance abuse, mental health, and the Baker Act. With a background in both government and private practice, he found drug and alcohol attorneys and Baker Act attorneys to fight the rights for those affected by addiction and mental health issues. Mark is also a Krav Maga instructor, and I may have said that wrong, so we're going to get into that and what that all is all about, but it empowers others physically and mentally. So I'm just super excited to have you on the I'm Going In podcast today, Mark. So thank you for joining.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me as a guest. You're an incredible individual. So the fact that you have allowed me to come on your podcast and share my story, I'm flattered. Sometimes I look back and I say, I can't believe I'm even sitting in it, sitting in a podcast room with somebody like you. So thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm very flattered and honored.
No, it's my honor. I think in life, we've all had our setbacks, and that's the part that I'm seeing now in today's culture, whether I'm on a podcast from Australia and Europe or in LA, or I'm interviewing people or I'm speaking. The moment we start to open up our own vulnerability and share what we've been through as individuals, it's so relatable, and it sparks this incredible conversation between man, woman, 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 man, man, whatever that is, that we start to really share how we were able to rise again. And there's this sincere interest and these heartfelt feelings of, man, I'm so sorry that you went through this, or I can't believe you're experiencing this right now. What can I do to help? And so we get our brains activated as human beings on how we can truly help somebody for the most part. So I think sharing incredible stories is super important. And, when I'm running this podcast, I always think about a lot of times it's not that we're talking to a group of people. We're maybe talking to one person out walking right now, got their earbuds in, listening to who you are, your journey, how you've been uplifting others. So it's super impactful that we're touching that one person's life to where we can provide new coping skills, mechanisms to not just be resilient, but also bounce even further ahead to learn how to live with their trauma, right? So tell me about, like, where did this all start with you?
God, it's been such a long journey for me. So this is my 31st year of practice. And I
Wow.
remember I remember like yesterday graduating law school. So the time really has really flown on by. But I started my legal career here in Palm Beach County. I was an assistant state attorney. So I did that from 94 to 99 and pretty quick. When you first out of law school, you're full of piss and vinegar. And if you become a prosecutor, you come sort of a little bit with this sort of mindset that if they're there, they got arrested, they must have done something wrong. But I realized pretty quickly when I started to see the same faces over and over and over again that there's something not quite right here. And the conclusion I came to was that a lot of these people were having behavioral health issues. Back then, it wasn't so much mental illness; it was more substance related, street drugs, things of that nature. And back in the 90s, when I was with the state, we really didn't have a lot of the resources that we now have, and obviously there was a very much the stigma that, well, if they're using drugs and getting arrested, that's a conscious choice, and so we should punish them for that, as opposed to why don't we get them help? And I did that. I was a prosecutor in 1999. I left. I went into private practice, made a lot more money, got married and divorced, and it was miserable, totally
Wow.
miserable. Um, in 2004, after I got divorced, I took a year off. I moved up to Washington, D.C. I worked in a presidential campaign. I sort of committed to getting myself in great shape. And I also got my master's in law. I'd wanted to go back to school for a long time. And so I tapped into my savings and I spent the year up in DC. It was an amazing experience, but the candidate that I worked for didn't win. So I came back. And then in about 15 years ago, with what I had left after the '08 crash, I ran off to California for 3 years. And I basically spent 3 years working out, teaching Krav Maga, uh, dating as many beautiful women as I could possibly find. And I took the California bar out there twice and failed it twice. And then after 3 years, when I was pretty much tapped out, I had no money left, I had to come back. And I did take the California bar a third time. I got within a percentage point of passing it, but failed it a third time. And friends started to say to me, maybe the universe is trying to tell you something. And I'm a little on the stubborn side, so I wasn't really paying attention, despite the fact that I spent almost a year studying for this bar exam and couldn't pass it. And I think I spent about 3 weeks studying for the Florida bar and managed to pass it first go. And then I met somebody by pure chance that completely changed the direction of my life. So I met a guy, his name is R. John Robbins. R. John Robbins is the founder of a company here in South Florida called How to Manage a Small Law Firm. They teach lawyers about the business side of being a lawyer, because in law school, whether you go to where I went, which was Nova Southeastern here in Florida, or Harvard, they teach you nothing about the business side of being a lawyer. I mean, they pretty much teach the same black letter law wherever you go, and you have a very sort of generic legal education when you get out. It's only when you start to apply it that you see how it all works. But they teach you nothing about business. And so Arjun Robbins had founded this company based on spending 3 years working for the Florida bar, going around the state fixing broken law firms. But how to manage a small law firm really is, at their core, is a personal development company for lawyers. And their core values is that financial growth has to be preceded by personal growth. And I got a chance to speak. I got a chance to see him speak at a breakfast meeting about 11 years ago. And once I heard him speak, I basically begged him for a job. And I spent a year working for him, watching him and his team teach other lawyers for all over the country about how to, grow their law firm, have a better life, provide better value for their clients, and help a lot more people, without killing themselves and ending up in a grave. And after a year of working with him, I decided I wanted to open up my own law firm. And he said, okay, who do you want to help? And I said, well, I know this sounds a little bit odd, but throughout my legal career and my personal life, I've been surrounded by people who have drug issues, mental health issues, and I think that's who I'm going to help. And he said, well, how do what's your plan? I said, I don't really have one, but I was a criminal defense lawyer and a prosecutor for a long time. And I read about this thing called the Marchman Act, and I think I can use that to help people. So in February of 16, without any money, because I was broke, I sat down in the local library here in Boca, and I opened up my laptop and I created a spreadsheet of people that I knew, and I smiled and dialed. I mean, I hadn't lived in the state I'd been out of the state for a bunch of years between DC and California. I hadn't practiced in a while because I hated being a lawyer. And I drove around to treatment centers with these business cards that I had printed on by Vistaprint, because they're cheap business cards. Yeah. And I said, hi, I'm here to help people. And they said, we've never heard of you. Who the hell are you? And at the time, there were only 2 lawyers who were using the Marchman Act, which is a very cool, which is a unique statute here in Florida that allows us to put somebody into treatment for periods of 3 months when there's a primary substance use disorder. So at the time, there was a lawyer in the south part of Florida who was doing it, and he sued nursing homes. And then there was another lawyer in the north, a little bit north of me, and he was a family lawyer who was doing the Marchman Act. And the guy up north didn't go south, the guy down south didn't go north, and they sort of kept it very hush-hush because they were making plenty of money out of it. And I went on social media and started to talk about it, and the guy down south went and registered the fictitious name to my website and tried to close me down. Needless to say, I wasn't going to walk away from that fight. And it took 14 months before anybody called me with a Marchman Act case. The first case I took, ironically, was a student athlete at a school in Florida. He was a baseball player, and him and another baseball player got accused of sexual misconduct with a female student. And in addition to the fact he could have lost his scholarship and been kicked out of school, they were very worried that the state attorney's office will prosecute him criminally. And back then the fee was significant. I think I spent all of the fee on gas, running backwards and forwards between South Florida and where the school was. But long story short is I saved the kid's scholarship. He got to finish out his collegiate career. He wasn't prosecuted. And I had just enough money left over to get a physical office. And I'll never forget this. The office was just a tiny bit bigger than the actual desk that was in it. So I had just enough room to walk around and sit down. And now we're in our 10th year, and I still have that office. I don't use it very much because we went virtual during COVID, and we have I think there's about 10 of us now, a team of 10. Wow. I just hired another lawyer, and my law partner is my wife, and it's been quite the journey. Quite the journey.
That's amazing. Yeah, you hear everybody's stories, right? And you think about as like you're telling your story, it's like building this cake. And what kind of cake is that? What flavor are you? What is your purpose for the cake? What's your celebration moment? Like what are you used for? And you've got all these different sprinkle pieces in of the trials and tribulations that you've encountered, the going up to DC and being on a presidential campaign, to going to California and trying to just figure it all out, and it being more of like a great time, but then you're losing all this money, but you're learning all these life lessons and getting knocked down. And then you put yourself in a position to be able to learn again, which I think is really important. It resonates with a lot of us, especially as we go through life, maybe job transitions, things don't work out for me. I was a professional athlete. Some point it stopped, right? And then all of a sudden I'm like, what am I supposed to do for the rest of my life? And I go through this serious depression on trying to figure it all out. So I'm doing all these odds and end jobs. And then it was this a la moment where I'm like, I get advice on, hey, you should go back into scouting and you should learn baseball operations. Well, I had to learn, right? So you go through these classes and schools, and you're latching on to mentors to try to teach you along the way from,
true.
I mean, all kinds of, there's so much relatability to what you have gone through, for I think most people, right? And, but you've kept persevering, you kept your boots moving forward, which is always the greatest life lesson. And just
I think
keep
I had
driving.
no choice. 11 months into opening
Yeah.
up, I lost my dad, and there was no
Wow.
gold at the end of the rainbow. So I had to be able to financially take care of my mom and my siblings along the way. I mean, I really had no choice. I had to move forward. I mean, what was I going to do? Go back and work for the government? I didn't want to do that. I was like, I wanted to, I needed to put my big boy pants on. I really needed to have that Rocky Balboa moment where I was either going to, stay on the ground or I was going to get up.
What was the passion point for you, though? I mean, obviously, like law, there's all kinds of different categories in law. I mean, we know this, right? Contractual law, all these different things. Why did you have such an interest in addiction and then the Marchman Act? Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize until I had that aha moment that it had been surrounding me forever. And ironically, when I opened up the phone and I started telling people what I was doing, I couldn't believe how many people came to me and said, I saw what you're doing and I want to let you know I'm in recovery. I mean, they were coming out of the woodwork, and people I'd known for years who had never shared that with me suddenly started to tell me, I'm in recovery. I'm in recovery. I was like, wow. I was just shocked because obviously every day they were working on their recovery. So it wasn't something they did. If they were going to a meeting at night, they weren't going to call me and tell me, but that was something they shared only with the people that they were going to the meeting with. And so that was interesting. But the real, I guess, aha moment for me was I realized that the reason I'd loved being a prosecutor, even though it didn't pay very well, and hated doing defense work, was because I never really felt like I was helping people. I needed that element where I was, I don't know, giving of myself, where I felt like I was making a real difference. And that doesn't mean that you can't make a difference doing criminal work, being a criminal defense lawyer. But for me personally, it didn't work. It didn't. I mean, I was
Right.
very skilled advocate, and I did a great job for the clients that I represented. But it didn't motivate me every day, other than the financial reward, which is fine. but for me, there has to be more than that. I mean, we built this business by helping people, and that's obviously the universe has rewarded me, and I have the ability to do things like travel with my wife, which up until really the last couple of years we couldn't afford to do. So I'm blessed that way. But I think what I figured out was the more people I could help, I could grow my business, which meant I could hire more people. So those people got to, take care of their families and their children and stuff. And then I could spend more time marketing the business. And that meant I could help more people because the phone would ring. And it was like, okay, by helping more people and making that my motivation, as opposed to how much money can I make, the money comes. And so I really, it's like every day, before we came on, I shot 2 videos on my phone. Every day I try to put out a video online on all the social media platforms so people can get the information they need to figure out if they even need a lawyer, but more importantly, get the knowledge that they need, and they should be able to get it for free. And it makes the phone ring, but it also makes a ton of difference in people's lives because they call and say, oh, I saw this video that you put out about the Marchman Act. I never heard of this thing before. Well, yeah, because the two guys who like to keep it a secret don't want to share it. They're keeping it in their own world. And it's not, this is a state statute. Everybody should know about it because we can help a lot more people. So I've made it my mission to try and spread the word and get out there and help as many people as I can. And by doing that, the universe has rewarded me, right? With material things and the ability to take care of my family and hire more people and all the wonderful things that we love. But the core essential mission is to save families. That's the mission.
Can you explain the Marchman Act? Where did this originate, and basically, how does it affect people? And what do you fight for? On what side of it? So yeah, just explain that process, please.
So there's 3 statutes that we basically operate under here in Florida: the Marchman Act, the guardianship statute, which was really designed for elderly people, but we don't use it for that, and then the Baker Act, which you already mentioned. So the Marchman Act was named after a guy, I think his name was Hal Marchman. So it was named after somebody. Like the Baker Act was named after somebody, a lady whose last name was Baker. So the idea was that we would have the ability to go into court and involuntarily commit somebody who has a primary substance use disorder. And I think initially it was just alcohol related, right? Somebody was an alcoholic who drank too much, we could get them into treatment. And I think back then, which was in the 70s, the options were few and far between. Fortunately, now we have lots of options. And the statute has been modified a number of times, and now it really talks about primary substance use disorder and co-occurring mental illness. So we have to have that primary substance use, which we still see a lot of, but we also see also a lot of mental illness. But what it does is it enables a family to go to court and get a court order to place their loved one into treatment for periods of up to 90 days. And you can repeat that. I had a young man in his late 20s who was in prison in Arkansas, and the judge sent him here to Florida under the condition that I would Marchman Act him, and I kept him in treatment for 2 years. And every 90 days, I'd go back and re-up the Marchman Act. So it can have quite a long lifespan if we need it to. But it is a statute that says you will go to treatment. It doesn't give as much relief as a guardianship, but it can be done very quickly, because the first part of the Marchman Act, because there's 2 steps in this, is a period of assessment, which is where, for lack of a better word, somebody who is qualified to give the court an opinion reviews the records, speaks to the family, reviews our petition, and then makes a recommendation to the court. That assessment period, which is anywhere between 0 and 10 days, can be initiated on an emergency ex parte basis, meaning I file my papers, the judge reviews it, and if he or she says, yep, I think we have an emergency here, it authorizes the police to go and get that person and pick them up and take them somewhere where we can keep them safe until we can get back into court for a full-blown evidentiary hearing. Mm-hmm. Now, way back when, I used to use just the police. We have evolved since then. I have my own little police force within the office. I've got a retired cop on staff, and he's got a team of investigators, because we get a lot of calls of people on the streets, people who are missing, and law enforcement just doesn't have the bandwidth to go looking for them. So we'll do it for them. And once we find them, John will call, whichever the local police department is, and say, I need 2 officers down here right now. I got a court order in hand. Let's go. And we'll get them picked up. And depending on the county, here in Palm Beach County, if I file at 9, I get a court order by noon. and I get the person picked up by 3. So it can be done very, very
Wow.
quickly. But my staff are used to working on everything as an emergency because we're always the last port of call, right? Nobody calls us so calm and collected about their loved one. They're like frantic. I need a lawyer. I need it done right now. So we can move pretty quickly. Um, so really a powerful tool when it's done right.
That's Mark. That's incredible. I think about the connections I've had in my past where families, friends have gone through watching loved ones live on the street or uh, go through that turmoil, and you're helpless, at times, and that's what you feel like. But in this case, I would imagine the majority of your customer base are those family members that or friends saying, "Hey, like they're lost. You need something has to be done. What can we do to get him off the street or her off the street or out of this environment?" And so that was my question: is who is your primary customer base that's reaching out to you in this panic of just a total disaster, right? And just this cry out for help, like, please help me out.
Yeah. So our sort of avatar, as it were, is typically a mum
Mhm.
and dad calling. Sometimes the parents are married, sometimes they're not. But when it comes to this issue, they come together and they call
Yeah,
us and say, look, this is our adult child. This has been going on for a long time, years and years and years, and we're done. The family has hit rock bottom because it is a family disease. It destroys the entire family unit. It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
metastasizing cancer. And in the middle of all of this is their loved one who's looking at them like, nothing wrong with me. You guys all need to go to treatment. You're all nuts, right? Their brain has been kidnapped. So
yeah.
they say there's nothing wrong with me. They're in complete denial. And so typically it's mom, it's it's the parents, but not always. I mean, I've had spouses call me. We have a couple of cases right now where it's, you know, siblings, right? I have an adult sister, an adult brother. I need to stop them from drinking or whatever it happens to be. And they call us from all over the country. It's crazy. It really is.
Wow.
I sit here and I'm like, I can't believe we're getting it. We had somebody from Hawaii that came in. It was a mum. She got a guardianship in Hawaii, but the problem was they had no treatment there. So we were able to get her son from Hawaii to Florida. Oh, by the way, in the middle of all this, they had to stop off in LAX and he had a complete psychotic break in the airport. And they 5150'd him, which is their version of the Baker Act. And they detained him for 3 weeks. Crazy stuff. Right.
Wow.
Just crazy. But that's why understanding how all this stuff works. Right? And I always think back and say, I was lucky I was a prosecutor and I did defense work because I understand how the whole system all works together,
Hmm.
right? Understanding how the criminal and civil work together because sometimes somebody does get arrested or they are in jail when you get the phone call and understanding how that works so you can give the family proper counsel I mean, when my father told me to go work for the state, it was the best advice I ever gotten. My dad left school at 14. He was not an educated man, but he knew enough to say, you got to cut your teeth somewhere. You got to
Yeah.
learn, lay the foundation for your career. That's great advice.
Man, I could see why you're driven every day with this. I mean, what's been the success rate with what you have seen? Even just talking about the Marchman Act and how it's impacted so many families. You mentioned it's not just about the individual that goes through the struggle. Most of the time, they don't even know they're going through a struggle because they're in la la land doing their thing and destroying themselves. But how impactful they are in that destruction of the family, of the friends, of the community, whoever they're touching, right, and whoever they've been associated with. So now you've picked this person up. Like that's got to feel number one when your either investigative team or law enforcement picks someone up and you get that call like, all right, we
Got
got
him.
this person, got them. Now from there, what's that journey like for that individual? You said sometimes it could be a couple years, but the family too, like talk about the rise part, how that moment where they start to all go in and they're just it turns this from a I don't know if I'm going to get a call that that person's going to be gone tomorrow as a mom or dad
Which
to,
we've had.
oh, okay, they're
I've
in
had
sick
those calls.
grief. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people I'm probably the only lawyer in the country that knows every year might get that phone call. And we've had years where we've had
Yeah.
two or three of those phone calls, and it's not a phone call to get, and you feel
Yeah.
as a, you say, okay, was there something else we could have done? What did we not do right? And when I first started doing this 10 years ago, I said, oh, I'm going to save everybody. But that, unfortunately, is just simply not realistic. We cannot save everybody, but we can save a lot of people. And that's a
Yeah.
good start. So sorry to answer your question. I can sit here and do all day and talk about this stuff. So I apologize if I digress.
No, it's
Um,
okay.
yeah. So you look, when folks come to us, the families come to us, they're very emotional. And so my staff knows that, family calls and they might be anxious, aggressive, angry. They know that this is part and parcel of what we're dealing with, and it's not because they're just trying to be difficult or they're just not nice people. They're just desperate, and the team understands that, and we deal with it appropriately. But if we can get somebody into treatment, that's the very beginning. The idea is not just to get them into treatment, but to keep them there long enough, and long enough in the most clinically appropriate facility for them. Because people typically, as a general, if treatment doesn't work, either because you're not in the right facility or you didn't stay in the right facility long enough. So from a time frame perspective, we tell families, look, think of this as a 1 year journey. Okay. I I don't have and I tell them I don't have a magic pill. I can't wave a magic wand. If I could, I promise I would do it, and I would do it for free. This is going to take time. This has been going on for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You're not fixing that with a snap of a finger. It just doesn't happen. It happens in the movies, but it doesn't happen in real life. So think of this as a 1 year journey, because we just know from experience, if you can keep somebody in recovery for a year, there's a good chance they're going to maintain recovery for the rest of their life, because they will now develop the skill set that they need to maintain lifelong recovery, like going to a meeting once or twice a week, having a sponsor, seeing a clinician once a week, or whatever it is, whatever they need to maintain recovery, whatever that looks like for them. And for everybody, it's different. Then that's where we have to get them. But it's going to take time, because they have been living in a different universe and they don't know anything else. Oh, and by the way, the family needs time to heal too, because they have been dealing with this crisis for so long, they don't know any other way to live either. So they need time to heal. And so typically, I mean, I would say, even on a March Burnett case, 3 to 6 months of treatment. They have to do 3 to 6 months of some form of treatment. And after that, they have to work the program, get a sponsor, go to AA, 12 steps, continue to work with some type of outpatient clinical services. If they need meds, to take them. If the meds stop working, get other meds. I mean, whatever it takes, right? It's a year-long journey. And when the families work that program, the results are remarkable. When they don't, then sometimes we get a disaster on our hands, or sometimes the family just disappears. And by the time they get to us, they're already exhausted, physically, emotionally, financially. They're spent in every way possible. And so to say to them, listen, think about this as a year-long journey, it's hard for them to even think about that. And I say, look, we're going to do one day at a time, and understand the one thing that's predictable about your case is that it's unpredictable. Your loved one is going to have good days and bad days, bad weeks and good weeks. And hopefully the good times start to outweigh the bad. And over time, things get better. I tell families that recovery is like the stock market. It trends upwards, but it has ups and downs, right, along the way. Over time, it's that way. But incrementally, it's this. That's recovery. That's what we have to do. But it's going to take a little time. And so I tell families that honestly, because I'm not here to bullshit anybody and say, oh, no problem, 30 days, they'll be good to go. I've heard that before. And I tell them, it's just not going to happen. Don't waste your time and money if you just want to do it for 30 days. It doesn't work. Not in my world.
It's so relatable, and it's in any process, when you're trying to instill change or learn from the moments of knockdown in your life, whatever trauma you've dealt with, the recovery piece, the learning how to walk with that trauma now, it's never going to go away. It's not something that you can just get through things. It's EMDR therapy for those that have experienced, a lot of trauma. Like for myself, for example, being in a mass shooting and going through what I went through, EMDR therapy was a godsend to me. And that was recommended by combat vets, friends of mine, law enforcement, first responders, people that were saying, hey, this is what we're doing. You need to go do this. But it wasn't just something that I knew I was going to go in and this was going to be a 1 or 2 moment stop. Like, oh, I'm just going to put the paddles in my hands. They're going to start shaking my head left and right. And all of a sudden, I'm going to walk out and go, hallelujah, I'm free. I'm good. Now I'm back to myself. It doesn't work that way. And that's what I found over the last 7 years since we got back from Las Vegas and that horrible night was this is a journey to rise again. And the same thing on recovery or watching my friends that have gone through addiction or learn how to stop drinking, or you talk to different people. I have a great friend out in Los Angeles. He was an Army vet, came back all messed up, got into booze, got into drugs, did all these things. And he had to stop cold turkey, but it took him a long time. And he still today goes to his meetings because that's his new business plan. Like you were talking about, you didn't really have a business plan. Most attorneys don't have business plans. And all of a sudden this guy's like, hey, why aren't we teaching a business plan to make sure you're successful long-term in life? And that's what you're doing in this whole Marchman Act, but that's what your organization is doing right now is you're restructuring, educating people on how to build this successful business of life and turn themselves around, right? And therapy is not something that just happens. I think the one thing that just listening to you talk and share your stories and everything is I relate to this as a trauma sphere where you put all those bad things, the addiction, the trauma, the moments that been knocked down in our lives, the times where we've been completely lost in moments that we can reflect on and now think, God, I'm so happy that I put the work in to get me to where I'm at. But if that sphere is out in front of us, and now we're putting ourselves back into a point where the family walks away, our support figures are gone. We go back and we have a drink. We go back and we put ourselves into a situation where we're going to bring on anxiety and our heart rate's going to be up again. We've allowed that sphere to come back on us and get close to our body and kick us in the back of the head. So how do we take those coping mechanisms out again and push it back out? That's by learning, right? And all the structure that you're bringing forth to all of these individuals that have been knocked down, and it's not easy. And I'm sure you see probably the relapses all the time, but I love the fact that like you just have these resources to be able to just keep driving and keep putting like here, nope, this isn't working. We're going to do this. Nope. All right. This isn't working. And then you're probably a cheerleader for the families too, right? Like constant motivation, or how does that work for you?
I am, and one of
Yeah.
the benefits of growing the business is I have a couple of case managers, and they're able to maintain constant contact with the families, right?
Yeah.
Because it
It's
just
cool.
it's just, I have such a full plate. It's just not possible to do that, and I never want the families to feel
Yeah.
like we're not here for them, that we don't care about them. And so we've tried to build a lot more resources into the law firm where we're just the support mechanism, the safety net, as opposed to I'm a lawyer, I file papers, don't bother me, right? Because this is not a real estate transaction.
Yeah.
This is somebody's child, and so having the resources is important. So, can I ask you a question, Todd?
Of course. Oh, yeah.
About
Yeah.
because I remember you telling me before we when we first talked about your journey. How long did after the shooting? I mean, how long did it take for you to start to feel again? Because you must have been numb after that.
Very numb. Yeah. It was a long journey, about a year and a half to where I started to somewhat feel like I had that resiliency again, bouncing back. But my day, it's a constant struggle. I see what I saw that night every single day. I have a 13-second or so memory. It's kind of clocked in that resets me. Um, I've learned how to kind of install my peace to walk with the beast side that trauma brings forth. I was a no blood, no foul mentality person, anyways. Don't share my emotions, suppress everything. It's the way we're all raised back in the day. But took me a long time, and now today I feel complete. I feel strong. I can go to my peace side. I can be myself again. But there's still triggers for me, Mark, when it comes to whether it's certain music sounds or putting myself into situations. I got to make sure my back's up against the wall. If I go to my church or if I go to a crowded venue, I'm always constantly kind of looking at exit points. So it never goes away, which is the whole point to all of it. And you're constantly just learning more about how I can control myself. If I feel the anxiety come on, if I feel that trauma coming back on me, I've learned now what that feels like. And I've learned to escape, whether it's going to the bathroom for just a second, just to get some silence and control my breathing. So that way I can come back out and pin my shoulders back and enter that situation again with a little bit more strength and understanding of where I'm at to be able to control my emotions and take ownership of it. So yeah, it's still a constant battle. Yeah.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I had to
No.
ask that. It just really resonated with me because I tell families, it this is about a journey into recovery. We're not curing anything, okay?
Right.
This is recovery. And once you are in recovery, then you have to work to maintain it. So I think what you shared, and thank you for that, is really about your journey into recovery, a different type of recovery. But we're seeing people who are traumatized. I mean, I'll give an example. Yesterday, I did a consult with a family, and it was the young lady she's 32, and the family's telling me she has an eating disorder. And I just know from speaking to so many families where there's eating disorder, especially an eating disorder. But I was like, there's trauma here. There's definitely some trauma here. And I didn't know what it was, but my gut told me when the family started to share with me that this young lady was unable to maintain a healthy relationship with, you know, somebody of the opposite sex, an intimate partner. I was like, she's been abused. There's no question. That was what it was. And when we got into it, that's what it was. She'd been sexually abused when she was 5 years old for many years. And not only had she been abused, but she had been abused with somebody who to this day is still connected to the family. And it was like
Wow.
the little family secret, right? And
Mm.
I said to him, she's in survival mode.
Yeah.
She's going from minute to minute to minute, just trying to survive. And whether that means she runs away or she tries a new drug or she has sex with somebody, whatever it happens to be, that is her coping minutes. That is how she survives.
Mhm.
And so I said, look, we gotta help her here, And I know the family's in crisis too. I'm sure they're riddled with guilt. I'm sure there's all this inter-family stuff going on. So, and I told him, I said, she needs a year, but so do you,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
so at the end of the day, there's nearly always some type of trauma. But when you speak to a couple of thousand families over the years, you already know. Soon as within the first minute or two, you're like, okay, I think I know what this is because you've just seen it so often, right? Okay,
Yep.
now I know what we're dealing with. Now I know the direction I need to move the family so we can get them all to start down that road to recovery. But as you
Yep.
so aptly and candidly said, it just takes time, and you've developed the skill set which enables you to live with this and deal with it. And when you feel it coming on, I mean, wow, I don't. You're amazing. It's just amazing just amazing. It's hard to envision
Well,
what was like because I remember hearing about it on the news, but to speak to somebody that was there, wow, amazing.
I was,
I'm
yeah,
getting goosebumps thinking about it.
you see the worst in mankind, but you also see the best. You see the people rise up to the challenge to put themselves out in front of others, to sacrifice their lives for other people, regardless of race, creed, religion, doesn't matter. So there was those inspiring moments that kept your boots moving forward. It was an 8-hour journey for me. We thought we were under attack. Um, horrible situation to be in. It was a war zone, but the aftermath was the rally point when everybody starts to come in and like what you do for the families and what you're trying to do for the people that are struggling is just to provide education. And then how when they get that education and like for me or others, what do we do with that? And I was speaking at a first responder conference just recently, and the idea, the mindset of our first responders, our military, of being able to just go in and have a conversation for 30 minutes after a combat, a war zone, or a horrific call, of losing somebody, or just some of the things that our like firefighters go through. All of a sudden they think, oh, I'm going to go through a debriefing and I'm good. I'm fine. No, because you're carrying that with you. Next time you hear a certain noise, next time you hear it, you smell something, next time you, whatever that is, it's going to bring you back. And unfortunately, like in your case with addicts and people that are struggling, whether it's through drugs or anything else, they have to probably totally transform their entire environment. And this poor innocent person that you're speaking to is unfortunately damaged early and now trying to live with all of this. And the coping mechanisms that she has is it's self-destructive, but it's the only way she can cope with this because it's there every single day. It's knocking on her head every day. And she's just trying to make it numb. And how do you teach her to be able to push that out, get it in arm's length? We got multiple people coming. We're all going to push this thing out. It's going to be out there. You're going to have to live with this, but we're going to start educating you on when you start to feel this way, go into a different path. You don't need to be in that environment. You don't need to talk to this person. You don't need to, whatever that is. I don't know what those are. I'm not a doctor or a psychologist, but whatever you got to do to keep yourself to a point where you're owning your trauma. You are standing up for that. You know it's not going anywhere. You own it. It's out in front of you. And now I'm going to be in control of that. And that's the empower piece. That's the part where you feel like, man, I love this life. I love where I'm at, right? People ask me, like, what was it like when you first realized that you were okay? And I said, everything became much greener. Like I'm a big 6'5" guy, and for me to talk about butterflies and how it just makes you feel, why not? That's what we need. You need to be able to talk about empathy and love, and that's why you do what you do. Yeah, you're making a great living. You're providing for families and all these things. That comes with it. But the choice you made to jump into this field was what I was really intrigued with because you probably could have gone into all types of different law, but you're in the battlegrounds helping not just the victims but the families, and you're putting things back together. So it's so honorable. Yeah, it's so cool.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, doing awesome stuff, man. So how do people? I know we've been flashing your website and things, but give us a little bit of like someone's in need. How are they contacting you? What should they do?
So our main website is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. And there's a boatload of information there. There's the main number of the web. There's the main number that you can email us. You can message us. And I have another website. So you mentioned the Baker Act.
Mhm.
I told you I lost my dad about 11 months into. So I lost him in January of what would have been 17. And here's the irony of the whole thing. My stepdaughter's birthday is on the same day as the anniversary of my father's passing. How crazy
Wow.
is that?
Yeah.
But 2 days after I buried him, I had a family member who had a complete psychotic break. And I was there with the police, the paramedics, and watched them strap her to a gurney. She was Baker acted. And then during COVID, people started to call me about the Baker Act because their loved ones were getting Baker acted too. And so it has become a mission of mine to fight the state when they illegally detain people with the Baker Act. So we have another website. It's called bakeractattorneys.com. And the Baker Act, when it's done right, is a really life-saving tool, but more often than not, it's abused. And so one of my missions has been to get people out of Florida's broken, draconian mental health system where they shouldn't be there. And if they need help, get them the help they need. So the bakeractattorneys.com website is there too. There's a ton of free content on there. There's videos and an ebook, and like I said, I just did 2 videos before we got out. I'm going to put those out when we're done, but there's just a lot of free content out there, and that's also a mission of mine to give people the knowledge they need. So, and then I'm also all over YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and
Yeah.
Instagram and TikTok, and I'm ever.
All of them.
I try to be, yeah, because people need this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. It's so awesome. Keep up the fight, brother. I mean, it's it's amazing. I rely heavily on my faith. It's really awesome to be, just to know that there's people like you, that are just fighting the good fight, and call it like sheep herders, whatever you call it. But just continue your journey, and anything I can ever do to help your cause, you please let me know. But thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me and let me share my journey.
Of
So
course.